All right there. Well, good morning to the 8th grade class here. And this is our first video for your first lesson here for your 8th grade year. So we are looking at this idea of just solving basic equations. And we're going to be using equations with addition and subtraction. We're going to be looking at equations with multiplication and division. And the key phrase that you're going to hear me talking about today is isolating the variable. So first of all, when we isolate something, we put it by itself, okay? It is isolated from the rest of the group. And when it comes to equations, and we're going to isolate the variable, of course, is the letter. Here it's y, here it's k, or sometimes some sort of symbol, but pretty much we'll use a letter that has a value. And it's going to be our job in solving the equation to figure out what that value is. And so we want to isolate that variable, meaning that we want to put it by itself. That's called isolating the variable. All right, so here's an example with addition and subtraction. Your assignment today is going to be divided into two parts. We have adding and subtracting. We have multiplying and dividing. So here's x minus 7 equals negative 6. Well, whenever I want to isolate the variable, I have to think, well, what's on the side of the equation? We have two sides of the equation, the left of the equal sign and the right of the equal sign. Equation, equal sign. On one side of the equal sign is one side of the equation. The other side is the other side of the equation. So I have x minus 7. So I'm going to think of this minus 7 as a negative 7. Not only is it a subtraction sign, it's also interchangeable with a negative sign. So since it's negative 7, the idea is I want to get to 0. I want to get to 0, so I want to leave x by itself. So if I'm at negative 7, to get to 0, I'm going to do negative 7 plus 7, which equals 0. But whatever I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other side of the equation. So if I added 7 over here, I need to come over here and add 7 as well. And negative 6 plus 7 equals 1. So I'm left with just x over here and 1 over here. Pretty basic. X equals 1. And sure enough, 1 minus 7 equals negative 6. Y plus 3.4 equals 0.5. Well, I need to isolate y. Now this is a plus 3.4. Also think of it as a positive 3.4. So to get to 0, I need to subtract 3.4. That's going to be 0. So then I'm going to come over here, 0.5 minus 3.4. Now, as an 8th grader, you have the option to use your calculator here. So we're going to come over here, and we're just going to plug in, because you're going to get into negative and positive numbers here. We're going to plug in 0.5 minus 3.4. That's going to equal negative 2.9. So I can see here now, I'm left with y over here. Y equals negative 2.9. All right, so let's go to the next one. Negative 3 equals k plus 3. Well, once again, I want to isolate the variable. It doesn't matter whether the variable's on the right side or the left side. I want to get it by itself. So I want to get k by itself. This is a plus 3 or a positive 3. So to get to 0, I'm going to subtract 3. That's going to give me 0. And since I subtracted 3 from this side, I have to subtract 3 from this side. Negative 3 minus 3 equals a negative 6. So that leaves me with negative 6 equals k. And that's my final answer. All right, so we have one more, then we'll talk about multiplication and division. 1 equals w plus 6. So I should probably make that look more like a 1 so we don't confuse that as an L. But it's 1 equals w plus 6. Well, this is a plus 6, so to get to 0, it's a positive 6, so I need to subtract 6. You'll notice that I always do the opposite. When it was a subtraction, I added. Added, we subtracted. Add, we subtracted. add, we subtracted. We always do the opposite. It'll be the same for multiplication and division too. 6 minus 6 is 0. That leaves me with 1 equals W. And sure enough, if I was to, oh, sorry. No, I messed that up. My mistake. We did not, I knew something was wrong. If we subtract 6 from this side, we have to subtract 6 from this side. All right? So we have 1 minus 6. 1 minus 6 is negative 5. My apologies. We got a little too much in a rush there. So this leaves me with minus 5 equals W. And minus 5 equals W. And sure enough, if I were to take negative 5 plus 6, that would leave me with 1, which is what I have here. So that is my final answer. All right, let's move into multiplication and division. Negative 3/4 n equals negative 2. Well, first of all, we need to make sure that we remember that a number right next to a variable means multiplication. Okay? So when I have negative 3/4 times n equaling negative 2. So it basically means whatever the value of n is, I'm multiplying that by negative 3/4 to get negative 2. So to solve a multiplication equation like this in one step, I divide. So this is going to become negative 2 divided by negative 3/4. So I'm going to come over here. This is going to basically be, I'm going to divide everything here by negative 3/4. I'm going to take this and I'm going to divide it by negative 3/4. Now I'm kind of setting up fractions with fractions, but just kind of showing you that I'm dividing to isolate n. So I'm going to end up over here with n equals, but I'm actually going to have to do negative 2 divided by negative 3/4. Now, as an 8th grader, I should know that a negative divided by a negative is going to be a positive. Okay? So I'm going to pretend the negative numbers aren't even there. Okay? So I'm just going to use a positive, and I'm going to do 2 divided by 3/4, because I know my answer is going to be positive anyway. So I know my 2 becomes 2 over 1. And you could punch this into your calculator if your calculator does fractions, but this is not difficult work. Okay? It's going to be 2 over 1. My division sign becomes a multiplication sign. We don't want to forget this. And then I make the reciprocal of 3 over 4, which is 4 over 3. Okay? So I do 2 over 1 times 4 over 3. 2 times 4 is 8. 1 times 3 is 3. I end up with 8 over 3. Here in 8th grade, when we're doing these equations, if you end up with an improper fraction, you can leave it that way as long as it's in simplest form. And sure enough, 8 over 3 is in simplest form because no number besides 1 can go into both 8 and 3. So I could leave this as 8 over 3. If I wanted to turn it into a mixed number, I could. 8 divided by 3, 3 can go into 8 twice. If I take 3 into 8 twice, there are 2 left over because 3 times 2 is 6. 8 minus 6 is 2. My denominator here is 3. My denominator there is 3. All right, let's look at the next one. Y over 4 equals negative 7. Well, this is a division problem. So to solve a division equation, I would actually multiply. So it's y divided by 4 equals negative 7. So to get y by itself, I'm multiplying everything by 4. Y over 4 times 4 just leaves me with y. But then I have to take negative 7 and multiply it by 4. Well, negative 7 times 4 is going to be negative 28 because I know that 7 times 4 is 28, and a negative times a positive gives me a negative answer. All right, just a couple more. Let's go to this one right here. Pi times x equals 3 pi. All right. We're not worried about, in this situation, converting pi to 3.14 or anything like that. Pi is just going to be a number. X is going to be our variable. Okay, so in this situation, to get x by itself, because pi times x is a multiplication problem. Remember, a number right next to a variable is a multiplication problem. So I'm going to divide everything by pi, and that's just going to leave me with x. But if I divide this side by pi, I have to divide this side by pi. Well, pi divided by pi, that's just 1, so that cancels it out. Okay, and that leaves me then with 3 times 1. Well, 3 times 1 equals 3. And sure enough, that makes sense, okay, that for x to be 3, because pi times 3 would equal the same as 3 times pi. If I look back at my original equation, that makes sense. All right, one more, 8th grade. Negative 2x over 3 equals 6. Now, I'm going to show you one way that you can make that sometimes these are a little bit easier. Sometimes there gets to be some confusion when there's a negative associated with the variable. And so you don't have to do it this way, but this is the way I'm going to walk you through this one. First of all, I want to switch. I want to get this side so it's positive and this side so it's negative. I want to remove the negative sign from where my variable is. And mathematically, what I'm doing when I do that is I'm multiplying everything by -1, because multiplying things by 1 does not change the actual number, and multiplying it by a negative simply changes the sign. So I'm going to rewrite this as 2x over 3 equals -6. I'm getting rid of the negative, and this side then is becoming negative, because 6 times -1 is -6. Now, first of all, I have to get 2x by itself. And since this is 2x divided by 3, I'm going to multiply both sides by 3 to isolate 2x. So the first thing I need to do is isolate 2x. 2x divided by 3, whatever that value is, multiplied by 3 equals 2x. Now, if I take -6 times 3, I believe that leaves me with -18. Now I have a multiplication equation. 2 times x equals -18, which essentially means I'm going to divide to isolate x. Now I'm going to divide that by 2. That's going to leave me with x. I'm going to take -18, and I'm going to divide it by 2. -18 divided by 2 is going to give me -9. It's a negative and a positive, so I get a negative answer. 18 divided by 2 is 9. X equals -9. And sure enough, that makes sense, because if I were to go back and plug it in, 2 times -9 is -18. -18 divided by 3 is -6. All right, we'll talk to you later, 8th grade. Bye.